Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, behind the wheel without a license. A bribery scandal at the DMV, the price paid by truck drivers to avoid taking the driving test.
I'm Peggy Pico with an update on water conservation in San Diego County, why water rates are going up even when water use is down. But first, we'll take a closer look at a roadmap of sorts on the potential impact of legalizing recreational marijuana use in California. What a Blue Ribbon Commission report says about the possible pros and cons.
People are now listening to their bodies and doing what they can do and not what they think they should be doing.
This was that 5 cents. Yeah!
Work it out. The evolution of an exercise craze going beyond looks. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. New details tonight on a bribery scandal at the DMV. The scheme allowed as many as 100 commercial truck drivers to operate without legal licenses. Federal authorities charged 6 people, including 3 DMV workers, with conspiring in the bribery scheme. Court records show DMV workers issuing driver's licenses to truckers without requiring them to pass mandatory state tests. This is after truck drivers paid up to $5,000 each to bribe DMV workers.
DMV has been very proactive and has already suspended or revoked a much larger number of licenses that were possibly impacted by the conduct of the defendants in this case. DMV has also conducted a review to see if any reported accidents involving any of the persons who hold California driver's licenses that may have been obtained as a result of the scheme charged in this case occurred. There were some accidents, but thankfully no fatalities.
The California Department of Consumer Affairs is reviewing the accreditation of the schools. Qualcomm unveiled details today about its upcoming smartphone chip. KPBS tech reporter David Wagner says it's designed to lure back lost customers.
Qualcomm says the Snapdragon 820 will sharpen displays while conserving power. The San Diego company is promising 40% better graphics along with 40% reduced battery consumption compared to its current chip. Industry analyst Lloyd Case with the Lindley Group likes to see Qualcomm focused on graphics.
Smartphones are getting bigger, right? Everybody wants a 4.7 or 5.5 or 6-inch screen now, and driving all those pixels takes a lot of graphics horsepower.
A lot is riding on Qualcomm's new chip. The company recently announced thousands of layoffs after a rough year. Qualcomm hopes to win back lost customers like Samsung, which used its own in-house chip in recent Galaxy smartphones. David Wagner, KPBS News.
Former President Jimmy Carter says he will undergo treatment for cancer. He announced the diagnosis this afternoon. Doctors discovered the cancer following a surgery earlier this month. Carter is 90 years old and was the nation's 39th president. After leaving the White House, he founded the Carter Center in Atlanta back in 1982 to promote healthcare, democracy, and other issues globally. UC San Diego may help develop a medical school and a teaching hospital in China. An 8-member delegation from China will meet with officials in La Jolla tomorrow. From our North County Bureau, KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg has more.
Representatives from Northwest University in China first approached UCSD with the idea last year. Since then, UCSD has had discussions with both the school and the Chinese government. Dr. Munir Soleiman directs UCSD's Health Sciences International. He says the plan is to build a large medical campus with a research facility in the central Chinese city of Xi'an.
It is intended to be a transformative project to bring evidence-based medicine as well as cutting-edge research and innovative medical education and training to that part of China.
Soleiman says the deal would enhance UCSD's reputation worldwide. He says it's too early in the process to discuss how much money UCSD might make in the deal. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
On parole tonight, a transgender inmate who is less than 24 hours away from a federal court hearing. A judge will hear her request for the state prison to pay for her sex reassignment surgery. State corrections officials say Michelle Leal Norsworthy was released from a men's facility near Sacramento. She was born Jeffrey. She was serving a 17-year sentence for second-degree murder. The Corrections Department is asking a court to dismiss her request because she has been granted parole. The appeals court is scheduled to hear oral arguments tomorrow. California's drought prompting changes in your bath routine. The State Energy Commission voted today on new, stricter standards for shower heads. They would be limited to less than 2 gallons a minute after July 2018. The standards would be the most water frugal in the nation. They follow Governor Brown's executive order for sweeping water-saving measures. State leaders also announced a $30 million rebate program to replace old toilets and grass lawns. Well, if you've noticed your tap water doesn't taste as good as it used to, California's drought may be to blame. Experts say when reservoir levels get low, water density builds up, causing water to not taste as good. Urban water suppliers do filter water, so it's not a safety concern, but there's not much anyone can do about the taste.
It's just essentially as a water level drops in a reservoir, just like in a groundwater aquifer, the heavier parts of the water are going to be closer to the bottom. So if a reservoir is full or if a groundwater aquifer is full, the water at the top is typically going to be cleaner.
State water experts say all public water agencies are required by law to test regularly for bacteria or pathogens. If there's concern about the quality of water, you should contact your local water supplier. Peggy Pico continues our coverage on managing the drought and water conservation in San Diego.
In his visit to San Diego yesterday, Governor Jerry Brown commended San Diegans for reaching state-mandated water cuts. But he warned the water saved here may soon be needed to fight wildfires. Joining me with an update and the next steps is my guest, Jason Foster, Director of Public Outreach and Conservation for San Diego County's Water Authority. And Jason, we met the conservation goals here in San Diego County for June, but there's actually better news for July.
Yes, we just have numbers in for the month of July, and it looks like our region saved a little bit more than 30% compared to the baseline from 2 years ago. So that shows an increased performance by our region in saving water, which is very good news.
Sure, and also from the 26% that we actually did in June as well, right?
That's
so
right.
It's up as we keep going. Now, some San Diego water districts actually did not reach their water conservation goals, and I understand the state has a plan to levy fines against districts like that. But will the local districts here be fined?
We don't think so at this time. The state board has been most interested in trying to make sure that they can get the education and get the water savings rather than resorting to fines right away. So our local agencies that are getting to their targets are still meeting with state board regulators to make sure that they're putting forth a good faith effort. So we don't anticipate any fines right now, but it's going to be important for all of our agencies to continue to work hard to reach the state mandated targets moving forward.
And despite that, as you mentioned, 30% is a high level of water conservation. Do we know how and how people are actually accomplishing this?
Well, I think to start with, people are doing a great job saving water. They're paying attention to the message to abide by the local water use restrictions that are out there. They're pursuing water conservation programs. They're taking the shorter showers. They're limiting their lawn watering. But we also got a boost in the month of July from some of the record rainfall from the tropical storm that came through. So that gave us a little boost as well. But it's going to be important for our region to keep up the water conservation through the rest of the summer months. If we get back to hotter, drier weather, this target's going to be in place until, February of 2016. Sure. So we need to keep up conservation moving forward.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that. So February 16, these emergency mandate requirements will go away, or that's when they expire, I should say. So what can we expect for the coming year?
It's still a little unclear what's going to happen next year. The governor has hinted that there could be adjustments to the emergency regulations come February, but I think a lot of that's going to depend on if we continue to perform and meet the state mandated savings targets. It also could be related to El Nino. If we get El Nino with a lot of precipitation and we can recharge a lot of our reservoirs and suppress our demands, that may affect the regulations moving forward. But I think regardless of what happens, conservation is still going to be an important thing for our region to pursue in 2016 and beyond. We just have to make water use efficiency a way of life in San Diego.
How do water agencies actually determine if people are complying, for instance, if they're complying with when to water, when not to water, and things like that?
There's a couple of ways they do it. Some agencies have patrols that go out and observe things in the field to see if people are complying. They also respond to water waste complaints that they hear from members of the public. They can also monitor the flows of their water system to see if the daily flow of water through their system kind of matches the irrigation patterns they want to see through their water use restrictions as well. So there's a couple of different things that they can do.
Well, despite recent conservation success and good success here, water rates will be going up in the districts and water districts in San Diego County. That can be discouraging to people. So how do you explain that water rates are going up even though people are conserving?
Well, public water districts have fixed costs that they need to safely and reliably run their system. And they try to keep their rates as low as possible so that they, minimize the burden on their ratepayers. But when you have a sudden reduction in water sales due to conservation, it puts that upward pressure on the rates to make sure that they can have the money that they need to run a safe and reliable water system. But in the long term, water use efficiency does depress or at least moderates the need for rate increases because it delays and defers the need to invest in additional infrastructure to supply our region with that water.
I see. Now, I just want to switch gears here just for the moment here as we wrap up. A lot of people have seen the national coverage of the toxic spill in Colorado's Animas River, turning that water orange. Is there any concern that toxic water could be headed towards San Diego?
Well, a safe and reliable water supply is the mission of the San Diego County Water Authority. And since about 60% of our water comes from the Colorado River, we've been watching that mine spill situation very, very closely. But the bottom line is, we don't anticipate any adverse impacts to our water supply from this incident. It's very far away. It's more than 800 miles away, and it's a vast river system. And we talked to the operations folks, not just at the Water Authority, but up and down in the basin. And the expectation is that any contaminants from this spill would be at below detectable levels before it even got to the intake system from the river.
All right, Jason Foster, thanks so much for the update.
Thank you.
The information highway just got faster for some parts of San Diego. Cox Communications and Time Warner Cable are boosting internet speeds. Councilman Todd Gloria joined Cox Communications in the East Village today to announce its new service called GigaBlast. The internet service provider promises speeds that are 100 times faster. A customer can download 100 songs in about 3 seconds. The gigabyte internet has been a hot topic since Google launched its version 3 years ago. Looking good at 30, one of the world's largest exercise organizations is based here in San Diego. KPBS reporter Claire Trageser says exercise has become less about appearance and more about health since the American Council on Exercise opened its doors.
Cross front. Heel down.
Patty Russell has been teaching aerobics at the La Jolla YMCA for 36 years.
1, 2, 3, knee up.
When she first started, she'd play music from something millennials probably have never heard of, 45 records.
Every song would be one specific exercise or one routine. And then we'd change our 45, put it back into the baggie. And then do another exercise.
A lot has changed over the years, and not just in how we play music. There was the bodybuilding craze in the 1970s, led by one former governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Step touch to the right and double time.
Then Jane Fonda's workouts in the 1980s, step aerobics in the 1990s.
Step back, step together.
And don't forget Jazzercise, an exercise dance class based in Carlsbad.
People got involved because it was typically about having a toned body.
Scott Goodison has seen exercise's many changes over the years. He's the CEO of the American Council on Exercise. The San Diego-based nonprofit certifies personal trainers and exercise instructors across the world. He says today,
people just want to live longer. They want to be able to do things when they're 75 with their grandchildren the way that they were able to do things when they were 40 or 50.
Fewer people are exercising today than 30 years ago, according to federal government statistics. Back then, about 3/4 of adults did some kind of physical activity in their free time. By 1997, that number had fallen to 60%. Now we're reversing the trend, back to 70% in 2013. Goodison says more people today know they should be exercising.
There's a tremendous amount of awareness today but the studies show the obesity rate is continuing to increase.
More than 68% of adults were overweight or obese last year, up from around 50% in 1985. Goodison says his organization is working to fix this strange dichotomy. More people know they should exercise, yet still are gaining weight.
It's not an easy solution. It's not an overnight fix. It's a lifestyle change. Unfortunately, we as Americans want instant gratification. We're accustomed to that. If we want the latest iPhone, we want the latest technology, and we can afford to go buy it, right? And so when it comes time to your fitness level, it didn't change overnight. And it's not going to change back overnight. So it's really about a lifestyle change.
Exercise trends today favor lighter weights, a focus on core strength, and more boot camp style classes, Goodison says.
Bicycle crunches right now, let's go!
Plus regular running, walking, or other cardiovascular activity. Mary Ellen Gross has been exercising since 1980 when she moved to San Diego from New York City.
I wasn't exercising at all. And at the time, I decided I'd like to walk. And I started to walk and run. And then very quickly, I started running.
She ran the America's Finest City Half Marathon in 1984 and at 71 years old is still running. She says exercise is more inclusive today.
You have a lot of families, you see a lot of strollers, moms and dads running with strollers. It's a whole different kind of attitude, I'd say.
As exercise trends change, the aerobics instructor Russell kept on moving. She says people now view exercise less as a means to look a certain way and more as a path to better health.
People are now listening to their bodies and doing what they can do and not what they think they should be doing.
The 67-year-old hopes she'll still be exercising in another 30 years.
One last scoop.
Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker helped produce that story. From barely being able to walk to running 3 half marathons in a year, Tri-City Medical Center's lucky 13 participants have beaten the odds. Tonight, we meet 2 of them who've overcome life-threatening illnesses and are set to complete the Triple Crown of marathon runs this weekend. 21 months ago, Melissa Capicelli had a heart transplant and couldn't even walk when she started the program.
It had gotten to the point where walking between 5 and 10 feet, I would stop, I'd be short of breath, my lips would be blue, I'd be shaking, and I was literally right on the verge of passing out.
Tina Knight, her training partner for the half marathon, lost her toes because of a severe blood infection that led to organ failure, and she almost died.
I was in a coma for 8 days, on life support and on dialysis. They told me my kidneys would never function again.
But none of those obstacles stopped these women from performing a rare feat, running their first and second half marathons this year, with help from trainer Paul Carey, who has worked with 80 patients since the Lucky 13 program took to the track several years ago.
Well, the name's actually a little bit ironic because in order to get into the program, you have to have some sort of severe medical issue. And the 13 represents the 13 miles that are run in the half marathons that they do.
Sunday marks the Triple Crown, where both these runners will complete their 3rd marathon in a year. Capicelli, who lived with a heart condition for 14 years, says she's grateful to the woman who donated her heart and gave her a reason to keep on stepping.
So that's my motivator to get me out and do it, because I'm living life for me and for everyone around me, but mostly for her. Because if she didn't do what she did, I wouldn't be here today.
About 10 runners from the Lucky 13 program will compete in the America's Finest City Half Marathon on Sunday morning. Examining the effects of prescription psychotropic drugs on the state's most vulnerable children. State senators held hearings yesterday to look at what happens to foster youth who are prescribed these drugs. Studies show nearly 1 in 4 young people in the foster care system use this medication. Some lawmakers want to reform the system.
We already have had a lost decade of continued over-reliance on prescriptions of mind-altering drugs. Now we need to focus on making sure that those kids have the mental health services they need to succeed.
Last June, state senators approved a package of bills to help curb the foster care system's reliance on psychotropic drugs. 4 states and the District of Columbia have legalized the recreational use of marijuana, and California could be next. A policy group is working to prepare for possible legalization. Peggy Pico takes a closer look at some of its recommendations.
The Blue Ribbon Commission on Marijuana Policy recently released a report that provides a roadmap for regulating pot in California. The commission began when the effort to get a marijuana legalization initiative on the 2016 ballot got underway. Here with further details is my guest, former chair of the San Diego Medical Marijuana Task Force, Alex Kreit, a law professor at Thomas Jefferson School of Law. And Alex, the commission report does not advocate, and it doesn't advocate for, and it's not against legalization of marijuana. So what is the purpose of the report?
Yeah, it's really, I think, a unique and a valuable thing. The report is saying it seems almost certain that we're going to have marijuana legalization on the ballot in California in 2016. Usually these ballot measures are written by special interest people behind closed doors, by the advocates who want to see the ballot measure passed. And this Blue Ribbon Commission is saying, we want to get out in front and talk about some of the things that are important publicly while this ballot measure is being drafted.
While it's being formed. Is there anything in the report that talks about how California should approach regulation of recreational marijuana use?
Oh, yeah. They look at a number of key areas, and they have something in the order of 50 sort of general recommendations. So there's a lot in there. They look at what's gone on in Colorado and Washington, and now Alaska and Oregon, which have already legalized. And then they talk about some of the things that are unique to California as far as the environmental impact concerns here, as far as our local politics, all of those things. So it's pretty comprehensive.
Can you give us a sense of some of those 50 recommendations that you're looking at?
One of the main things that I think that they talk about, and this influences a number of the recommendations, is that any ballot measure should really be concerned not with maximizing tax revenue, but with public health and public safety. And that's, I think, key, because if all you're concerned about is maximizing tax revenue, then you're going to have a lot of use. I mean, if you want to get the most taxes, you want to increase use. And so taxes are important, but first and foremost, we want to look at public health, and I think that's what the Blue Ribbon Commission is looking at, and that really influences a lot of what their other recommendations are.
Well, there seems to be a shift in influence. A recent survey by the Public Policy Institute finds that a narrow majority of likely voters support legalizing marijuana, but there is still concern, as you talked about, on the impact on youth in particular for health and safety. So how particularly are they addressing that or looking at addressing that particular issue?
Yeah, well, they talk a lot about the need to invest money in education. They need to have very strict regulations as far as youth access. And they look at, for example, what's gone on with cigarettes. And I think the story of cigarette use versus marijuana use is an interesting one. Cigarettes are obviously still legal, and we've really dropped use of cigarettes, particularly among young people, very successfully over the past couple of decades, whereas marijuana use, it's remained fairly stagnant. So I think they're looking at a lot of lessons to be learned there, and how can we apply that to the legal market for marijuana.
Let's talk a little bit about the areas of disagreement in this report. I'm thinking of road safety, license taxations. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, so on a number of these things, there may be no clear answer. There's policy goals, and then you could argue a few different methods or tactics to achieve those goals. For road safety, that really is in some ways a scientific issue. The reality is we just don't have the science right now to do the same sort of roadside test that we do for alcohol, but you can do impairment testing in the form of, walking the straight line and that sort of thing. And the reality is right now, we don't have enough funding, we don't have enough trained officers that can do that sort of recognition. And that's something that really, frankly, needs to be addressed, whether marijuana is legal or not. We have a lot of people on the roadways driving under the influence of marijuana and other prescription drugs. And so that's an important thing to look at either way.
Let's talk about this. The report is shaping up how the 2016 ballot initiatives on legalizing recreational use of marijuana in California might come about. So where is that effort right now?
Yeah, so right now there are a number of competing proposals. People have put forward language. I think there's something like 6 that are out there. And the reality is that I suspect the one that's most likely to be on the ballot has yet to be formally made public. What's going on behind the scenes is that all of these groups that have put forward specific language and proposals, they're working together to try and come to a consensus, because no one wants to see more than one ballot measure on there competing. The people who are advocating legalization, the surest road to defeat is if there's 2 or 3 competing measures. So what's happening now is they're trying to form and come to agreement and have only one on the ballot in 2016.
All right, Law Professor Alex Crate, thank you so much for the update.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Judy Woodruff on the next News Hour, how classical music transforms the lives of kids from poor areas in Boston. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
Pope Francis addresses a joint session of Congress next month, and there is a San Diego raffle for D.C. tickets. The pontiff plans on donating a rare Bible worth $8 million to the Library of Congress. Congresswoman Susan Davis is holding the drawing for standing room only spots on the west lawn of the Capitol. The contest information is on her website. Here comes the heat again. Blame it on monsoonal moisture from Mexico, creating hot, humid conditions and possibly thunderstorms in the mountain areas. 70s and 80s over the next few days by the beaches, 80s and 90s in the inland valleys. A forecast for some rain in the mountains with 80s and 90s there, and an excessive heat watch in the desert with a high, look at that, of 114 degrees Friday and Saturday. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.